And then the client is left to think, well, now what? What do I do? So the balance is really, what are the most critical moments that you need to ensure that you are there for your client? It may be a payment where they're actually making a payment, or any other stages where that client is very vulnerable. Let's say we were talking about insurance, right? The loss of a loved one. How are you going to make that decision into your brain, technology or the human components? So every organization is going to be different, but not knowing what are your most critical moments of truth where you are actually delivering the value that they came to get from you, then doesn't matter if it's human or technology, the both are going to fall apart if you're not able to deliver what they needed.
Thank you so much for everyone's time. Hopefully you can hear me. My name is Chris Johnston today, joined by my co-host Alex Genov. And also we've got such a wonderful guest. We're joined today by Fabiola. And Fabiola has extensive experience across multiple industries, including healthcare, telecoms, manufacturing, professional sports teams as well. And we're going to hear about her experience, particularly in the financial services and insurance, having worked in Allstate and Medlife, and most recently as Vice President of Client Experience at Northwestern Mutual. I would say that Fab, as I now know her as, is also a best-selling author. Her book, The Voiceless Customer, Why Customers Leave, was an Amazon bestseller. I'm just going to read you a short excerpt from a 5-star review, which I think gives a fantastic summary into the book. So the reviewer writes, it's the idea that values the psychological construct which depends not only on the product or service, but also the customer needs, values, beliefs, and personalities. That is the reason why if customers do not feel or heard or be understood by a business, that they will not be loyal to them over a long run. So I think that's a lovely way to kind of enter the conversation around how do you co-create with your customer, how do you bring them into the conversation as well. And Fab is also in the top 100 Hispanic tech professionals of 2024, and also is involved in mentoring leaders of tomorrow. A couple of interesting stats for you. So obviously an author, but also a doctorate in service innovation from Georgia State University, digital transformation executive degree from Harvard, and also one of 3 women in year 50 students in electronics and communication systems and engineering. And I see you're very active in Instagram. I know you're a keen foodie and also CrossFit as well. So very complimentary to yourself. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure. I want to thank Alex for the invitation to join this amazing podcast. So I'm looking forward to the incredible conversation we'll have.
Super. And that's a lovely way to bring in Alex. Alex, I was saying you're looking pretty suave today without the jacket. So maybe you want to kick off today's conversation. Obviously, you know Fab pretty well, so I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
Well, thank you, Chris, and Fabiola. Thank you again. And to add to the long list of accolades, a wonderful human being as well. We've known each other for a while now. We met on the speaking circuit and so on, and we became friends. So I'm really grateful that you're able to join us today. So yeah, I mean, this conversation is about building trust and is about how you treat your customers. So I'll open it up to you, Fabiola, to tell us what your what your highest level thoughts are on the importance of trust and how you have really built this with customers, with coworkers, with employees, and so on during your career.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex. When we think about trust, we have to first think about empathy, right? Is the ability to really connect to others, other person's feelings. And when you are able to do that, then you're able to have that emotional component to be able to build trust that it takes 1 second to destroy it. So when you think about customer experience, really what we are trying to portray or explain is at the highest level possible is really the aggregate interactions that a client has with an organization, company, throughout the lifetime cycle of that customer with that company. So when we think about customer experience and trust is the fundamental pillar that will allow a company establish that relationship, maybe for 1 year or potentially for a lifetime. And every single action that company takes, it can take several forms. Direct interaction with them, it may be via online, offline, anything that client receives or interacts with that organization or company, it will add or destroy value. And those are the components that allows an organization to build trust. And unfortunately, trust right now keeps declining. The majority of customers, I was just reading an article from Forbes that 90% of customers don't trust organizations. So what do? They go to other customers to see how that company actually deliver that value for them. So when you think about trust, it's everything in relationship to succeeding or failing in terms of an organization capturing a customer.
That makes perfect sense, Fabiola. And what are some of the misconceptions about customer experience that probably lead to that erosion of trust?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alex. I think the first one is thinking that customer experience is the job of one department, right? It may be there's some organizations that are just starting their journey related to customer experience. So they set up a customer experience department. And unfortunately, you mentioned, Alex, in your introduction, what is the role of other departments? What is the role of actual culture? How you hire and fire employees? Customer experience is not the job of one department. It's really how the organization designs and executes strategy. So number one, like I mentioned, is thinking that customer experience just belongs to one department. The second misconception, I believe, is thinking customer experience for the US is not newer, but it has been a newer concept for the last, let's say, 10 years. So before that, it was customer service, right? So when you think about customer experience, you immediately go to customer service if you don't understand what customer experience really is. Customer service is part of a customer experience. Customer experience should be thought as the overall umbrella that serves the strategy to ensure that your people, your processes, and your platforms are aligned to that strategy to ensure that you're delivering value and will continue delivering value to that client. So thinking about customer service as customer experience, I think, is one of a big misconception, just because the still organizations don't understand what customer experience is. So they solve it just for customer service, meaning when clients actually are reaching out to you for help, which in most cases is too late because that customer may be already frustrated. And if you are not able to fulfill or solve their problem, they simply become your biggest promoter of bad reputation that your company has. And I think the third one that I would like to mention is thinking that customer experience, for example, for mature companies that are going through that transformation, is a one-time investment. Like you invest in, let's say, in revamping your systems, your processes, and then that's it. You did it and you deliver a customer experience transformation. And those three misconceptions are adding to the challenges that we have currently. So if any of those, or if all those three misconceptions exist in your company, the likelihood of you being able to actually get return on your investment for your customer experience strategies it's going to be highly unlikely, because the customer is going to see that you may have, for example, a great interaction in one step of the entire journey of that client. So I think those will be the three misconceptions.
It's interesting that you also provided that CX is a sum of parts. You know, you talked about the interactions across the journey, and it's not just one department's responsibility. There's this multiple approach as well. And I love the way you summarize the three pillars in terms of some of those touch points around people, process, and technology. What I'd be really interested to kind of build on is you talked about the return of investment in customer experience, and that seems to be a challenge at the moment. What are some of the ways that people could think about that, you know, and particularly as you're talking about CX strategy in terms of convincing and illustrating value of CX to the organization, given that you said that there's these misconceptions. So how do we then turn the organization to put a new value in customer experience?
Yeah, I think when you look at how organizations have measured customer experience for many, many, many years, of course, you have Net Promoter Score. Some people may agree, disagree with it, customer satisfaction. But what happens with that is that specific value that you may get may not necessarily translate into the outcome you're looking in terms of sales, retention, whatever it is that you have as a metric to help you understand the value that customer experience strategy or digital transformation is bringing you. So, for example, I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you go, how many times you have interacted with an organization, and you immediately get a survey saying how satisfied are you? Well, at that moment in time, you may have been happy with that interaction. But as you transition into actually using that service or product, you realize that that's not what you expected. So that client at that moment has no way to potentially change what they said, or potentially reach out to tell you what's happening with their value that they thought they were getting with the purchase they made. So when you think about the ability to translate that into business value, which is the challenge, Chris, that you mentioned organizations are having right now, is because they measure customer experience as a one-time event. They don't measure it in a way that will allow them to truly understand the context of that metric. So when you're trying to improve customer experience, or you are setting the foundation to help you understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve for that client, and how you are able to actually quantify that problem to help you understand what are the most critical components that actually are impacting the business in terms of actually customers abandoning the process of a purchase, customers that may not return to you for a second or subsequent purchase, and potentially consumers that started the process, but they never convert into a client. So those three elements of potential business value, if you're not able to have a view into what's happening into that, what we call, let's say, the purchase funnel, you are going to leave a metric guiding you potentially the business outcome, and those two are not matching. For example, you may have the Net Promoter Score that happens every quarter. Well, that's not enough to really tell you and guide you or point you to the why that client or that consumer is not actually converting. So clients or organizations are actually very reactive in terms of how they measure the value they're getting with their customer experience strategies. But there's also amazing companies that are actually proactive. They know when a consumer or a client are going to actually abandon that process in terms of their investments that they have made in improving the customer experience. So in order to solve that, as an organization, you need to understand, do you really understand what your customer thinks about you, how they feel about your organization? And if you don't know the answer, that's a problem, because the CSAT, the Net Promoter Scores, are not going to give you that value or that understanding that you need from your clients. So you may deploy a lot of, let's say, digital transformation with a metric that may not necessarily translate into the root of that problem that you need to solve for the client. So the misalignment in understanding, and this is where emotion and trust comes in, you cannot get that through a simple survey. You really need to understand the context, and this is where co-creation, really on connecting with your consumers or your clients, come into place for organizations to understand what is the problem and how they are going to solve it, to really return that investment into the organization.
Fantastic. And I think, I'm sure, Alex, that really resonates with you, the idea of rethinking measurement in terms of the alignment of, what the customer is actually trying to achieve, and then obviously how the organization values that as well. Do you have maybe an example that could build on that, Alex, in terms of some of your work in terms of measuring emotion and seeing how that translates through the funnel that might create another additional point from Fab, what Fab's been saying?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Yeah, Fabiola, I just agree with absolutely everything you said, and it is this distinction between the what and the how. And Chris, you kind of said that, but I want to pull those two things out, from your statement, because a lot of organizations, like Fabiola said, measure things, right? They have the tools, but it's the how. Many times maybe they don't understand what they're measuring, really. So NPS, there's debate about that, but I would suspect that many organizations don't really understand that it's a measure of loyalty and what's behind it, right? So they adopt it because others have adopted it, and that's true for a lot of metrics. And it really takes a very thoughtful leadership to really understand, what you want to measure. So if it's loyalty, and then how it's affecting other things, what leads to that? Like Fabiola, you said, trust is a leading indicator of loyalty, and then it's leading indicator of purchase. But it is this more structured approach, and really what to me it's behind this is understanding why people behave the way they do and why they feel the way they do. And if you just stick to the numbers, which is the NPS is a number, if you just stick to that, you're not going to know that. And a lot of the times the root cause, the sentiment is hidden in the open text. And this is the genius, I think, of NPS. And I think it's lost. That point is lost on many people. The number is just a simple arithmetic. It's nothing too special about it, but it's the why you feel that. And then you need special technology, really AI, just like the company that Chris founded and is heading up a Doorboard, right? That is taking that, analyzing the feeling, the sentiment, the emotions, and then the root causes.
I love that. And just maybe shift gear, this idea of thinking about your customers as people rather than numbers. And Fabiola, your experience within insurance, you're meeting customers at the most vulnerable point in their experience, where trust is kind of built or destroyed within seconds. And I love the idea of thinking about it from a CX strategy perspective. So how do you design, or how do you co-create using empathy to meet customers in what can be a very vulnerable experience that then creates this long-term loyalty? Essentially, when trust is broken, how do you rebuild that as well?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Chris. When you think about service, right? insurance, financial services, it's an intangible thing. So clients come to you for a solution to a problem they have, and they are going to pay the company money every year, however they are paying for a promise. Really, what you're selling is a promise that you will be there in their vulnerable times. And when you think about trust and how you actually build that experience, is you really need to put yourself in the client's shoes. And there are so many circumstances that you come in to help organizations, and everyone will say, yeah, I know what my customer wants. Tell me. And that's their perception of what they think the customer wants, but they haven't actually asked the clients. They haven't actually sat down with the clients or co-create that potential solution to the customer experience strategy that you're trying to solve or build if you're approaching these from the beginning. So when you think about service, let's say insurance, how they came to you, what are the most important factors that are impacting that emotional component that Alex just mentioned, that will drive them to stick through the process or abandon that process because they did not feel that they can trust you or the company. And so many times organizations have third-party distributions or stakeholders that are the ones delivering that experience. So when you think about co-creating that experience to build your customer experience strategy, you really need to sit down or connect with your consumers or your clients to really understand how the emotional component of that experience, so you can really understand what's happening. Is it a people problem? Is it a process problem? Is it a platform problem? And then you are able to take that information, build, let's say it's the application, right? They didn't understand the language. The language is too complicated. And then you present it back to them, and you are able to co-create that experience as you're building it with those consumers and clients. And that's how you are able to truly connect and build that emotional relationship to help that organization really build that experience as you are transforming your strategy. But it's really easy to completely just delete all this process and go directly into, I know what my client wants. The problem is, let's say the problem is that the website, we don't have an application or an app. We need an app. And then you have seen this over and over and over. Now it's Gen AI. Everyone wants the solution with Gen AI. But if they don't understand the true problem they're solving for that client, which they can find if they are not connected to the client or the consumer, then what they deploy is, of course, not going to work. And then they say CX doesn't add value. Well, the problem, it was not CX, is that the problem was never found, and what they solved was for the symptom, not the actual cause.
And just to add some color to that, Fabiola, because I did spend some time in the insurance industry with State Farm Insurance, and just to give an anecdote of this point, which is extremely important point about customers not being, or clients not being numbers or just numbers in spreadsheets. Because another way to look at what you said or rephrase it is, yes, I know what my client wants because the numbers are in the spreadsheets. I see the numbers, the spreadsheets, right? So there was this when I was at State Farm, a big business push to have the agents, State Farm agents who are independent contractors, to sell more products, right? To sell not only insurance, to sell financial services, checking accounts, and there was a bank and all that stuff. And that's from the spreadsheets, it makes sense, right? Somebody has insurance, they don't have a bank account with them. I mean, it's obvious, right? A gap. Let's fill this. And so this story is from research we did, ethnographic research, or visiting the agent and in rural Indiana to really understand their work, and to that's a story about empathy, essentially, right? So during that visit, we spent a week with this agent in rural Indiana, small town. And we went to the office, and we spent the days in the office. We spent some time traveling with him to his clients. But this office was this small open space, right? One big room. And we saw during the day clients streaming in to just hand in their check, right? They could have mailed it, but they just came in, chit-chatted with everybody. And then we realized when we spoke to the agent about the difficulty of selling these extra products, because that involved a very intimate conversation about the person's life, right? Because it's finance is tied to life events and to life in general. So in the small office, there was no private space to have that conversation, right? So everybody would have heard the conversation. So here's the one little example of the total customer experience of you ask, somebody to do something for the business based on the spreadsheets, but not having a good understanding of the holistic situation, right? It's kind of a misguided approach.
Absolutely. And I think when you mentioned ethnographic studies, Alex, and sometimes those are not seen as added value, and I can't emphasize enough the learnings that you will get from those studies. We in the previous company we did one like that, where we actually sat down with consumers and clients for in their dining rooms, in their kitchens, just to understand how they came across the company, how they felt about the experience. And when we started the journey to transform, it was to create that easy, quick purchase experience. And what they were telling us is, we don't think about you as a company. We think about, for example, Alex as my advisor, that is the one that is actually delivering that experience. And I don't necessarily want it quick. I actually will make me feel a little hesitant if it was too quick, because I'm building that relationship with Alex. And for me, it's more the conviction that he will be able to be there. So we were solving for easy, quick, but what they really wanted is that conviction. Of course, they wanted easy and quick, but the conviction portion of it was critical for them. And how you actually bring that to life when the process involves processes, platforms, people, and without that sentiment and the understanding of that consumer and customer, it will have been potentially a failing strategy, just because the conviction portion was, you can't find that through spreadsheet.
This is such a true insight, Fabiola. So to me, that's a true insight. Like, we throw around the word insight willy-nilly here, but this is a true insight. It's about the relationship, because that builds the trust and so on. And you see how important it is to start from that and then build the technology. Then you can build an AI algorithm to emulate that. But that would be very different from saying, okay, we need AI, let's get that chatbot, whatever algorithm already exists, and let's jerry-rig it within the process and hope to have the emotional outcomes.
I really love where the theme of co-create is going, because I think, Fabiola, the idea of even approaching co-creation is almost, saying that you don't have all the answers. And I think brands traditionally have gone out to say, well, we know our customers and all the rest. So thinking about how do you bring the customer into that conversation. Obviously, you can use the open text, you can do the ethnographic studies. What are some of the ways that organizations could build this into their CX strategy in terms of how they co-create with the customers. Ultimately, I believe to create innovation, by sparking new ideas and all the rest. So it seems like a really valuable kind of cornerstone of the discussion here.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think there's several approaches, and there's companies out there that actually manage co-creation platforms for the organizations. But the actual concept of co-creating is when you look at your customer base and you really have the ability to build that co-creation strategy that will truly enable you to build your strategy with that insight, that's critical, because you don't want to set up that co-creation strategy without actually using those insights that will come back to inform the strategy. And you mentioned potentially sparking ideas for innovation and sparking ideas for other solutions, features, whatever is the case. So organizations that are out there, you may go with an organization that is already doing that, or you may just start something internally to really capture the value from those interactions that you will have with your customers and consumers. And you will realize how much they're eager to help you, how much they're eager to actually help you understand what was their experience from their eyes, and what are the perceptions they have potentially about bringing self-service for your service delivery, or other things that you are thinking about. But the problem with innovation sometimes, I believe, is that there is a great mind professor from Harvard. His name is Sunil Gupta. His research, his publications are primarily in the digital strategy arena, and he has given a great analogy of why transformations, or in this case innovation or digital transformations, fail. And think about a big vessel, a big ship, and you have all these little boats connected to that vessel. And think about those small ships as ideas or innovation exercises that you're doing. And if they are not connected to the ship, that vessel is not going to move in the direction that you want it to move. And what has happened is innovation is so disconnected to the actual problem that you are trying to solve for your client or your customers, or the future problems that you may have, that those efforts are just waste of money and effort. So when you think about co-creation, the problem that your clients are telling you, or how your newer or your future clients are telling you how they interact, and if you don't bring those insights with that ability to co-create with them and feed that through the innovation strategies and the innovation teams that you have, then what you have is two disconnected, in this case, ships, vessels, boats that are not moving in the same direction. And that's so critical to really understand that the problem you're solving, the investment that you're making year after year, in this case, for CX, you need multi-year strategies, then it's going to be a waste of money. And then for that, there's the struggle, Chris, that we mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that CX is losing its ability to translate into business value that they are delivering. And I think everything starts as simple as truly understanding the problem. And I'm solving the problem. Alex just mentioned, you just are going to throw technology out there without really understanding, is that the problem you're solving, or you are just trying to deploy a technology and then trying to find a problem that it may solve for your organization. And that's where I think when you look at it from a high level perspective, it becomes very simple, but how you execute it and how you actually design that is where the complexity comes.
Of course. And I imagine in big organization, and going back to your original statements around some of the challenges of siloed organizations and all the rest, you can imagine that you start off with a problem statement and then the project kicks off and you suddenly forget what you're actually trying to solve for because it morphs into something bigger. Alex, I'm just wondering, does that resonate in terms of jobs to be done and thinking about like goals of customers and how do you design around the customer? You know, you've often talked about customer centricity. Just wondering, is there a point to be made there about how do you action some of these ideas around co-creation with customers?
Absolutely, Chris. Yeah, and to mention another prominent professor, Clay Christensen, he had this brilliant framework of jobs to be done, which is, it's just like customer needs, but just getting away from the semantics of needs, wants, and the confusion around that. He made it so clear in terms of what do customers need to get done, right? You need a job to be done, you hire, you get a tool, you hire a tool or a product or a service. And that's it's not rocket science. It's really simple, and it's this empathy and this understanding that I think the humility of admitting that you don't know. Clay Christensen's famous example of the milkshake, right? The milkshake that you want to sell more milkshakes, but the milkshake for the same person has different job in the morning, commute to work, and in the afternoon when you pick up your kids from daycare. So that is the humility of saying, I don't know, so I'm going to find out. Many times the innovation happens when really brilliant people stumble on something that they struggle with, and it happens so that many other people have the same problem. So that's not, research is not necessary, and a lot of great startups start that way, right? But it is difficult, like Fabiola, you said, in large organizations, it's this the bureaucracy that builds up, and then in a way, the goal of a large organization now is to preserve the status quo. Let's face it, right? It's to preserve the wealth. So any new idea is, no matter how it's presented and how people want to pitch it, it's seen as a threat to that status quo.
So true.
Yes, and I think I suppose the next kind of linking statement, and Fabiola, would be lovely to get your thoughts on. Could we be then thinking about trust as a way to prioritize the problems to solve for customers? So this idea of prioritization from a CX perspective being a key challenge, and simply if we were to apply the NPS broad metric number, it's quite hard to do that prioritization. When you get to that level of co-creation, you start ranking the problems to solve from a value creation perspective. Have you seen that that's a bit of a challenge in terms of how you actually prioritize for customer, and co-creation being a wonderful way to solve for that prioritization issue?
Yeah, I think there is a two-step process, right? When you think about the ability to gain the budget from a company perspective, right? That you need to ensure that you have the ability to set up a strategy that will help the company achieve the goals they have in terms of growth, in terms of retention, seeing it from a customer's perspective. And if you have won that battle is potentially, you can present a better case if you are able to showcase how your current process, how people are interacting into that delivery of that service or the creation of a product, and how that is translating into your strategy that you have from a corporate perspective. If you're able to showcase the impact that the lack of change will have in destroying the brand that you have established because of the gaps that exist in your experience. So the only way to really get that, the trust component, which is thinking about the emotional, the emotional component of how that customer feels when they think about your organization, and how their interactions, either adding or destroying value, will have in years to come, is going to be critical. So from one perspective is gaining the ability to get a budget to be able to do that transformation. The second component in terms of co-creation that allows you to gain or build that relationship that will be really rooted in trust is to really be listening. And I think the humbling part of not knowing, and for that you are going to start a search into the insights that will give you will open the window into how those clients see that experience. It requires a very humble leadership, sorry, because not having the answers, as a leader, some people may feel very uncomfortable about that. So even starting the co-creation, the co-creation strategy, Chris, that you referenced earlier in this discussion, is the ability to say, you know what, I don't know, and for that I need to go and find insights. And if you are able to do that, the trust is not only the trust that you're going to build with that client, but this goes back to the concept, and I think, Chris, you mentioned that Alex talks about customer centricity. It goes back to the culture of that organization. And if the culture of that organization is not yet understood, and for that, customer centricity, or the ability to say that it's a customer-focused organization, if they're not able to really understand and guide their principles of strategies across the entire organization, then trust is going to be diluted, because the only ones trying to do that, as I mentioned, is potentially the digital product teams or the customer experience strategy teams. And the rest of the organization is just operating as they always have. So trust is not only a pillar for you to build the relationship that you need with your clients, but it's also the pillar to build and change how you hire, how you train, and how you actually execute strategies, not only for customer experience, but just strategies across the entire organization. And in a lot of cases, those are very siloed.
Yeah, and I love the core concept there, which is very much around leadership, and what, again, going back to your original kind of statements around where CX is either misinterpreted or fails, the idea of starting with leadership and that setting the tone for customer experience. I think the other key thing you mentioned throughout this is the value of building that trust with your own people, who from your key ideas is delivered from a service perspective. A large proportion of that is delivered. So I think this co-creation idea has an organizational benefit by allowing yourself to be open to saying, look, we don't have all the answers. That'll actually bring your people along and build that trust within the organization as well. So I really love that idea as well. Can I maybe just ask, what I'm really valuing from this conversation is it's really appealing to a very strategic kind of framework and thinking around customer experience. So I really appreciate all the ideas around that. I suppose when it comes to strategies about choice and sacrifice, can you maybe talk about the balance, and I think it was touched on earlier, between technology and human touch? And, where do you, the pull and push levers for going for technology versus where human interaction is really valued? And I think, given today's AI is a big buzzword, I kind of laugh. I like the term almost intelligent. Skynet definitely hasn't taken over yet, but I would love to just get your viewpoint around, how do you balance that challenge between technology and human touch?
Yeah, great question, Chris. Thank you so much. I think with the balance is related to the connectivity of the experiences. So you mentioned chatbots. Yes, they're not perfect yet. But when organizations solve for a problem, let's say that in this case, customers want to reach out to the organization for a problem they're trying to solve, they're just very siloed into how they're solving for that. It's not that the technology is failing, which in this case, yes, a portion of it is failing because it's not yet very smart to give them the answers that the customer has if it's a very complex question or a very complex problem. But the problem is that organizations are stopping there in terms of that solution. They don't see the connectivity of what happens before and after that interaction with that customer, that then the customer is frustrated, and then immediately when their online chat option is not solving the problem, guess what? They are going to try to talk to someone or text someone. But the problem is not necessarily the actual technology 100%, is that they stop solving for the client after they deliver that chatbot. And then the client is left to think, well, now what? What do I do? Or also, if you're going to deploy a chatbot and not connected to the next, in this case, you're not thinking about the escalation of that the escalation path for that client, then you're leaving that client to solve the problem for themselves. So the balance is really into what are the most critical moments that you need to ensure that you are there for your client. It may be a payment where they're actually making a payment, or any other stages where that client is very vulnerable. Let's say we were talking about insurance, right? The loss of a loved one. How you're going to make that decision into your brain, technology or the human component. So every organization is going to be different, but not knowing what are your most critical moments where that critical moment of truth where you're actually delivering the value that they came to get from you. So going back to Alex's question, what I hire you to do a job, and if you're not there at that moment, then doesn't matter if it's human or technology, both are going to fall apart if you're not able to deliver what they needed. So if I would like to summarize that, is the ability to understand from beginning to end that customer experience. And from there is what are the most critical moments that you have to be there. And then what is the connection or the balance between human and technology is going to vary. You need to be able to connect it together, because that's how the customer experience your service. They don't just experience the chatbot, they experience you as a company. And the lack of connection is where the problem resides, I believe.
That's interesting. And I think to build on that, maybe Alex, where, human technology can also get it wrong, where you try to blend this idea of personalization. I think you have a good example in e-commerce where the personalization, where they try to blend technology with your human touch, can also fail. So maybe just to get your thoughts, Alex, just building on the points from Fab in terms of that idea of trying to get that balance right.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant points, Fabiola. And just, I mean, to build on that and to provide an analogy, right? It's about tools that solve problems or that fix issues, for example, right? It's if everybody is on board and enamored and fascinated with hammers, right? Everybody's talking about hammers. Hammers is going to be the next big thing. And everybody's adopting hammers, and all of a sudden you have a screw there in front of you to take care of, right? And you start blaming the hammer. Well, everybody's using the hammers, but in this case, right, it's as simple as that. It's be it a person, a solution involving people, or technology. These are tools, and I think you need to start with what you need to accomplish, and then select the right tool. It's as simple as that. And then in terms of, I'm a big believer in technology, and this new technology is absolutely amazing. I mean, our lives are much better because we use such technology. But but we need to develop it starting from the customer problem when you're dealing with people, right? If you're in the realm of physics or construction, or I mean the physical world, right, where it's only numbers, right? It's like when you're talking about the strength of a beam, like you're not going to go and ask the beam how it feels in terms of the pressure, right? That's silly. But as soon as you start dealing with people, then you have this pesky other factor called psychology, right? And feelings and all that stuff. That's really annoying because it's not in the spreadsheets, right? And that's where you need to use tools, AI, and that sort of thing. But yeah, I think Fabiola, you've made the case very, very well in terms of what makes a good customer experience strategy.
I think that's a great segue into maybe summarizing, some of the key learnings for today, and maybe ask in a second for Fab just to summarize some key takeaways, whether they're applicable to financial services or could they be applied elsewhere. So if we start at the start, we looked at the 3 misconceptions of customer experience, and they were key insights that I think are really important if you're setting up your CX practice within your organization. There's some of the fundamentals, as we've heard from the start, and then from that we also thought about this idea of customer experience as sum of parts as opposed to a departmental siloed solution, and it was fantastic to hear about from Fabios's experience the various touch points from people, technology, and process, and how you can think about working backwards from the customers to generate insights. I think one of the most compelling ideas presented here today was the idea of co-creation. I think that's a really fundamental anchor point for thinking about rebuilding trust or recovering trust within organizations. So a really thank you for that key insight. And then we talked about the mood music, the organizational culture being really fundamental for that co-creation process to happen, and the role of leadership. But fundamentally, I think what we've really been able to do in the last hour is tap into the very strategic mind of an expert in this particular area. So maybe just turn over to get 2 or 3 key takeaways that you think could be shared with the audience as they go about building the value of customer experience, showing the organization the value, and ultimately starting with the customer. So maybe Fab, if you maybe summarize any key takeaways, and then we'll wrap up with a thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I think the first one that I would like to provide is ensuring that your strategy is actually informed by insights coming directly from your customers or your future customer. That's number 1. Number 2 is how you ensure that your strategy, when you deliver to your delivery teams, digital product, however you name your delivery team, really understands that strategy, so it's implemented in the way that you foresee. And I think the guiding principles of how you can help them understand what you're trying to solve from a customer perspective is critical. I have to emphasize that it's about experiences and changing their point of view in terms of you're delivering experiences that connect from beginning to end, and help them understand that it's not about features that are delivered, but it's about experiences that are delivered. That's number 2. And I think number 3 is the ability to really get the cultural component as part of, or actually is the fundamental element to really succeed with any customer experience strategy. If you really want to deliver experiences that wow clients and your customers and allows you to really compete based on experience, which is nowadays what clients want, then you really need to think about how you are hiring for that. You're hiring for that person that is going to care for what you're doing, because either you care or you don't care. And you can help with the people that may not know but care, but you can't help with the people that simply don't care. And you also need to reward based on that strategy. So if the reward for performance is based, for example, on features and it's not on experiences, then the outcome that you're going to get are disconnected from your strategy. So ensuring that so I'm going to summarize them. Ensuring that the strategy is actually informed by the clients or your future customers. Ensuring that when you're delivering that strategy to your delivery teams, they understand that they are able to assess that experience is connected and it's not just about features, but about experiences. And third, the cultural component is foundational to the success with any strategy. That will be my 3 wrapping points.
Superb. And I maybe just turn over to Alex just to reflect on that and also to provide the vote of thanks. We're so grateful for you taking the time to join us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very beautifully put. I mean, there's no more to say. I think that's fantastic. Thank you so much.